Imagine this. Two people walk into a bank on the same day. Both of them earn the same salary. Both of them have the same credit score. Both of them get approved for a mortgage. The bank looks at their numbers and tells them both the same thing. You can afford a house that costs $500,000. One person hears that and says, "Great, I will take the most expensive house the bank will give me." The other person thinks differently and buys a house that costs $350,000 instead. 20 years go by. One of them feels financially trapped, stressed about money, and unable to make changes in their life. The other one has investments, freedom, and choices about how to spend their time. Same income. Same bank approval. Same starting point. So what actually happened? What was the difference? Today we are going to talk about one of the biggest financial mistakes that people make, a mistake that can quietly control the next 20 years of your life without you even realizing it. And it all starts with one simple misunderstanding. The difference between what the bank says you can afford and what your actual life can afford. When people start thinking about buying a home, they usually ask one question over and over. What is the most expensive house I can buy? That question sounds completely logical on the surface. You want to get the best house you can afford. You want to maximize your purchase. But that question is actually the wrong one to ask. Because buying a house is not just about qualifying for a mortgage. It is about what happens after you move in and start living there. A bank only checks one thing when they approve you. Can you technically make the monthly payment based on their formulas? But your real life asks a much more complicated question. What happens to everything else in your financial life after that payment is made every month? What happens to your savings? What happens to your investments? What happens to your stress levels? What happens to your flexibility when something unexpected comes up? The truth is very simple. Just because you can qualify for a house does not mean you can comfortably live with it month after month for 20 or 30 years. And this is where millions of people make a mistake that affects decades of their lives. Let us take a few minutes to understand how banks actually think when they decide how much money to lend you. Banks do not know your dreams. They do not know what you want your future to look like. They do not know how much financial stress you can tolerate before it affects your health and happiness. They only look at formulas. Two of the most common formulas are called the front-end ratio and the debt-to-income ratio. Usually banks allow your total housing costs, including mortgage, taxes, and insurance, to reach about 28% of your gross income. Then they look at all your other debts combined and allow total debt to reach around 36 to 43% of your income. If your numbers fit inside these formulas, the bank says you are approved. You can have the loan. But there is a hidden problem with this whole approach that most people never think about. Banks use your gross income to make these calculations. Gross income means the money you earn before any taxes are taken out. But that is not the money you actually have to live on. That is not the money that hits your bank account every month. Let us imagine someone earns $120,000 per year. That sounds like a lot of money. That sounds like a comfortable income. But before that money ever reaches their bank account, many things happen. Taxes take a large portion right away. Health insurance premiums are deducted. Retirement contributions come out if they are saving for the future. Suddenly the real income that shows up in their account every month is much lower. Maybe this person actually receives $80,000 or even less after everything is taken out. But the mortgage was approved based on the full $120,000. That means the payment that looked comfortable on paper when they were calculating with gross income suddenly feels much tighter in real life when they are working with their actual take-home pay. And this is how financial pressure slowly begins to build. Not overnight in one dramatic moment, but gradually month after month as they realize there is less room than they expected. When people calculate whether they can afford a house, they focus on one number above all others: the monthly mortgage payment. They make sure that payment fits into their budget. But that payment is only the beginning of what a house actually costs. Owning a home comes with many hidden expenses that renters never have to think about. Property taxes can go up every year. Home insurance is required and can increase. Utilities are often higher in a larger house. You need furniture to fill all those rooms. Things break and need repairs. The lawn needs maintenance. There is a common rule in real estate called the 1% rule. It suggests that homeowners should expect to spend about 1% of the home value every year on maintenance and repairs. For a $500,000 house, that means about $5,000 every single year. But the tricky part is that maintenance does not arrive as a nice monthly bill you can plan for. It appears unexpectedly at the worst possible times. The roof starts leaking during a rainstorm. The water heater dies on a cold morning. The air conditioner stops working in the middle of a heat wave. Each one of these problems can cost thousands of dollars to fix. If your budget is already stretched tight by a large mortgage, these surprises create stress very quickly. They force you into debt or force you to delay other important things. There is another cost that many people never think about when they are deciding how much house to buy. It is called opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is a fancy term for a simple idea. When you choose to spend money on one thing, you are giving up the chance to spend that money on something else. If a large portion of your income goes toward housing every single month, that money cannot go toward investments. Let us imagine two different families to see how this works in real life. Both families earn the exact same income. Family A decides to buy the $500,000 house that the bank approved them for. Family B decides to buy a $350,000 house instead. Family B saves about $800 every single month because their housing costs are lower. They do not spend that $800 on more stuff. Instead, they invest it every month in a simple index fund. Every month, year after year, they keep investing. If those investments earn about 7% per year on average, which is a reasonable historical return, something incredible happens over time. After 20 years, that $800 per month has grown to about $420,000. That is almost $500,000. And it all came from one single decision made 20 years earlier. The decision to buy a smaller house and invest the difference. There is a phrase in personal finance that describes a very common situation. House rich, cash poor. It describes people who own expensive homes but have very little actual cash available. On paper, they look wealthy. Their home may be worth a lot of money. Their net worth might look impressive. But their everyday financial life feels tight and stressful. Most of their income goes toward the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. There is little left over for investing, saving, or building real freedom. So even though they own a valuable asset, their daily life is restricted. They cannot take risks with their career. They cannot take advantage of opportunities. They cannot handle unexpected expenses without stress. The money is all locked inside the house. And getting access to that cash is difficult. You would have to sell the house or take out a loan against it. Meanwhile, the person in the smaller house has cash flow. They have options. They have breathing room. Many people justify buying the most expensive house possible with one belief that seems logical. Houses always go up in value. And it is true that housing usually increases over time. But historical data shows something important that changes how you should think about this. Over very long periods of time, housing prices typically grow about 1% above inflation per year. That means houses grow slowly and steadily, but not dramatically. Meanwhile, diversified stock markets have historically returned around 7% per year after inflation over long periods. That is a significant difference. Now, this does not mean buying a house is bad. A home provides stability and comfort and a place to live. It is not just an investment. It is where you raise your family and build your life. But it highlights something important. A house is primarily a lifestyle asset. It is where you live. It is not usually the strongest wealth-building engine compared to other investments. So if you pour all your money into a huge house, you might be missing out on the growth that could have happened if you invested some of that money elsewhere. Instead of asking yourself, what is the biggest house I can get the bank to approve, there is a better question to ask. What housing cost allows my financial life to keep growing and expanding? Some people use a simple rule to guide this decision. They try to keep housing costs below 25% of their take-home pay. Not gross income, but actual money that arrives in their account. Others use a different approach. They simply make sure they always have room in their budget for 3 things that matter most. Consistent investing every month. A growing emergency fund for unexpected problems. And financial flexibility to handle whatever life throws at them. This approach might mean buying a smaller house than the bank says you can afford. It might mean waiting longer to buy. It might mean choosing a different neighborhood. But it creates something extremely valuable. Financial breathing room. And breathing room is what allows wealth to grow over time. Breathing room is what allows you to sleep at night. Breathing room is what gives you options when things change. Over long periods of time, wealth is rarely created by dramatic one-time decisions. It is usually built through small structural choices that are repeated year after year. One of the most important of those choices is housing. When housing costs stay manageable, everything else becomes easier. Investments grow. Savings grow. Opportunities appear. Stress decreases. But when housing consumes too much of your income, everything else slows down or stops completely. So remember this the next time you think about buying a home. A mortgage approval measures risk for the bank. It does not measure comfort for your life. The bank is protecting itself. You have to protect yourself. If this video changed the way you think about housing and money, make sure to subscribe to the channel. On this channel we break down complex financial ideas into simple concepts that anyone can understand, even kids. Because financial knowledge should not be complicated. It should be clear enough that everyone can use it to build a better life. And before you leave, write this in the comments. Freedom is more important than a bigger house. Put it in your own words if you want. But make it real. Because the smartest financial decisions are often the ones that give you the most flexibility for the future, not the ones that look the most impressive today. Thanks for watching. And I will see you in the next video.